All right, anytime. I'm ready. All right. My name is Geoff Young. I am an American candidate for the governor of Kentucky this year, 2023. Um, I was born in Massachusetts and moved to Kentucky 41 years ago, and I've lived here in Lexington ever since. I worked for 15 years at the state government in Frankfurt, the Environmental and Energy Cabinet. And I started running for office in 2012. And I've never won an election, but I won a primary last year in 2022, the Democratic primary for the U.S. House of Representatives in our part of Kentucky. Kentucky has 6 U.S. representatives and, of course, 2 senators like every other state. Are the primaries what? Yes, the Republican Party of Kentucky and the Kentucky Democratic Party each have their own primaries, usually in May of uh, of the year, and that the winner of each primary becomes a candidate for the general election. All right. Well, I hope you learned a lot. Okay. Well, this year is an election for the governor of one of the states. And so my issues this year have been to ensure that all women have access to abortion according to the terms of the 1973 U.S. Supreme Court decision in Roe versus Wade, which I think was an excellent decision. Unfortunately, last year, just about 1 year ago, the U.S. Supreme Court simply reversed that decision, which I think is one of the worst things they've done recently. So in Kentucky last year, we had a referendum to change the Kentucky Constitution, and the people uh, wanting to pass this referendum wanted to state that there is nothing in the Kentucky Constitution that guarantees the right to an abortion. And that would have been a big step in the direction of making all abortions illegal in Kentucky, which has already happened in some states with no exception to, for example, to save the life of the woman if an abortion were medically necessary. So that was a big issue last year, and it's still a big issue for me this year in the governor race. Another part of my platform is to establish a state bank. Only one state, North Dakota, out of all 50 states, has a state bank at this time. It was established about 100 years ago, and it's worked very well for North Dakota and the people. It funds or loans money to small businesses, to students who want to go to college, and it's been very successful. I think every state should have a state bank. That's another issue. I'm also very much against corruption in our government, including, of course, the um, executive branch, the legislative branch, the Kentucky House and Senate, and especially the judicial branch. I think a lot of our judges are very corrupt, and they routinely dismiss cases before allowing any discovery to occur. And I think that's one of the most, if the case was meritorious, it's one of the worst things any judge can do. So I think a whole lot of Kentucky judges need to be impeached or removed or have their licenses to practice law in Kentucky revoked. Those are 3 of the issues I focused on. That would be accurate enough. Uh, we don't know what left wing and right wing mean in this country. Uh, we don't understand it. So I call them all neoconservatives or neocons. If they, and I look mainly at their foreign policy. So, for example, when Hillary Clinton was running for president in 2016, she was proposing that the United States military establish a no-fly zone over the country of Syria. Uh, that's a neocon policy that could have started a conflict between the United States and Russia over Syria, with Russia and the U.S. shooting down each other's planes. So I don't have much use for the word neoliberal. I think most high-ranking Democrats today are neocons, and most high-ranking Republican politicians today in Washington are also neocons. They're identical. Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Yeah, I have a tremendous amount of opposition from the Kentucky Democratic Party. You know, the party structure, the officers, the chairman of the KDP have been opposing me since 2014 when I first ran as a Democrat for the U.S. House of Representatives. Um, they call me a supporter of Putin because I oppose all transfers of weapons to Ukraine. Um, they call me, I don't know what they call me. But they routinely rig the Democratic primaries against me uh, by doing such things as when I try to walk into a party meeting in my city of Lexington or for the state Democratic Party in Frankfurt, I try to walk in, they immediately call the police and try to have me arrested for trespassing. So I'm forced to go outside while they hold their meeting and talk to the police who come by. And I haven't been arrested, but I haven't been able to attend any part of a couple dozen meetings over the past 9 years. They also, what else do they do? Um, well, when I won the primary last year in 2022, they almost endorsed my Republican opponent. They didn't allow any party funds to support my campaign. So I was unable to beat the Republican in November of 2022 because I had actual opposition from my own party. That's typical. Yeah, yeah. I mean, if I had stayed, I would have been arrested and thrown in jail overnight for trespassing. I didn't want to do that, so I just waited a few minutes, went outside, and talked with the police who arrived a couple dozen times over the last 9 years. It's ridiculous. No, I don't know of anyone else that has experienced that. But I got 83,000 votes in the primary. Now, let me think. Now, that was in the general election in my district for the U.S. House last year. So that shows that it's only the party leaders who are dead set against me, and not average Democratic voters. A lot of them think I'm fine. Yes, yes. It consists of lawyers who represent Democrats, incumbent Democratic politicians. There aren't that many of them in Kentucky. The Democratic Party has been not almost wiped out, but greatly um, defeated over the last 20 years. Fewer and fewer Democrats in the Kentucky House and Senate, and big donors, um, people who uh, benefit economically. They or their companies benefit from having a Democrat in as the governor. No, nobody can be kicked out of either party. You can't kick them out. I guess in many countries, parliamentary republics, you can expel party members. In the United States, no one can be kicked out. If you go down to the county clerk's office and register as a Democrat, then that's what you are. So they've done everything up until the point of kicking me out. They've done everything they could to keep me from knowing anything that they're doing. They won't tell me when they're going to meet. It's ridiculous. It's like they're operating an organized crime organization, and I'm like some kind of reporter or um, um, person investigating their corruption. They treat me that way. Right. So this year, I filed a ballot challenge. The Democratic primary was on May 16th, but before that, on May 4th, I had filed a ballot challenge in court saying that Andy Bashir, the incumbent and the favored candidate, uh, was not seeking the nomination according to law, and therefore his name should be taken off the ballot, and he should receive 0 votes. The court should set his vote total to 0, and a new primary must be held with myself and the third Democrat who ran, whose name is Pepe Martin. So that case is still in court in Franklin County, where the capital is located. And I don't know how likely it is, but it's possible that the judge will nullify the result of the May 16th primary, which Andy Bashir won, and call for a new election with only the incumbent governor not on the ballot. It's possible. Uh, that would be that would be a valid primary to replace the May 16th primary, which I have alleged was invalid because one of the candidates was unqualified because he had broken one of Kentucky's election laws. He had rigged the primary. I'm trying to get the May 16th vote nullified. And since we have several months until November, there's plenty of time to hold a new election all across the Commonwealth of Kentucky, every county, with only Pepe Martin's and my name on the ballot. Theoretically, it could happen. But as I said, our judges are not honest. So we'll see. Yeah, there are no membership dues for either Republican or Democratic Party. Those are the only two mass uh, parties in America. There are third parties that are much, much smaller. Kentucky has a pretty active Libertarian Party, for example. Nationally, there's a tiny Green Party. Uh, but if you go down, you don't have to talk to a Democratic Party official to join. All you have to do is go down to the county clerk's office and register or change your registration if you were something else before to become a Democrat, and that's final until you change it again. Yes, that's partly true. Uh, there are some statutes or laws that mention, for example, a certain committee might have to have 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and one other person as the chairperson. So the two parties are written into laws. No other party is part of governmental structure, except now you can be a low-level state employee uh, and be anything you want. You don't even have to be a registered voter to be an employee. But if you want to, let's see, work in the legislative branch, everything is partisan there. Supporter. Well, that kind of debate has gone on for many years all around the world, and I agree with the position that you and your party have taken on making Switzerland neutral again. Right. I would agree. Yes, occasionally I'll get a call from someone who's irate about one of the positions I've taken, usually regarding foreign policy or abortion. Uh, but the main opposition I've gotten has been from my own party, the Kentucky Democratic Party. The chairman of the party last year, 2022, said to reporters, Mr. Young does not represent Democratic Party values. And my response was, oh, so it's a Democratic Party value now to support Nazis in Ukraine, to send them weapons. That, that was a new development. I mean, I thought Democratic Party values were, reduce income inequality, protect the civil rights of all citizens, no matter uh, what they do in their personal lives, and that kind of thing. Help the workers, help unions. Apparently, all of that's been replaced by support for the government of Ukraine. Unfortunate, but that's where we are right now. Mhm. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that. It's too bad. Yeah, right. You call yourself anti-fascist. Yeah, right, right. So in the United States, we have various groups of people who call themselves progressives, and there is a progressive caucus in the U.S. House. There's something called the Squad. I'm not sure exactly how many members they have now, but yeah, right. Okay, maybe that's a new term. But in my opinion, no one who supports Western imperialism, no one who supports sending weapons to the Ukrainian government is on the left, is a leftist or certainly not a socialist or progressive. I think they're all flattering themselves by calling themselves progressives. If they're pro-war, I think they're far right wing. In my opinion, they're neocons. A small number of right wingers, Republicans, and so on, are more or less anti imperialist. Right. So it's in general, since the end of World War II, 1945, both parties here have been united behind imperialism and wars such as the Korean War, Vietnam, war in Iraq. I don't, I just don't think it's been bipartisan. So there are some, small number of anti-war people, genuine anti-imperialists in the Democratic Party, a small number of independents who are anti-imperialist, and a small number of Republicans. Hmm. Right. Yeah, I think Jimmy Dore is great. I think he's a true anti-imperialist. I think so. Yes, I supported his force the vote idea. There's a whole lot of hypocrisy, and part of that arises from the fact that the establishment controls campaign funds. Somebody who contributes to the Democratic Party, and then they go on and donate some of that money to help elect certain types of Democrats. They're helping the pro-war faction. They're helping the establishment. They're helping the imperialist part of the Democratic Party eliminate genuine opposition. I'm interested in the campaign of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. this year. He seems to be much more anti-war and pro-diplomacy than any other major party candidate for president I have seen in my life. I just turned 67, and I think Robert F. Kennedy could become the most anti-war president, anti-imperialist president in our history. Or he could be influenced by the system. We don't know. But I'm supporting his campaign in the Democratic primary in 2024 against the incumbent Joe Biden, who I think is actually a war criminal. Yeah, I think Noam Chomsky listed the ones from Harry Truman up to the present day. And he said they have all committed international aggression, which is the supreme international crime, according to the Nuremberg decision after World War II. I agree with that. In fact, I took two courses with Noam Chomsky in 1976 when I was an undergraduate at MIT. I was majoring in economics, and I took these two political science courses with him. And that's where he made the point about all post-war U.S. presidents. If we were to have a second Nuremberg trial, they would all be accused of conspiring to commit international aggression, and they might all have been sentenced to hanging. Yeah, it's not going to happen, but it includes all. I spend a lot of time on Twitter, and I frequently debate people who say, "Oh, Donald Trump was not a neocon. He wasn't as bad as Obama or Joe Biden." I say he's equally bad, equally a war criminal because he failed to stop any of the ongoing wars that were happening when he was sworn in. He didn't stop any of them, which makes him complicit in those war crimes. And then he committed a few more of his own. Not at all. Yes, right. And then there was the assassination of Iranian General Hassan Soleimani, which almost started a world war in the Middle East. So I think Trump is precisely equal to any of the other imperialist presidents we've had after World War II. He's no better at all. Right. He sounds good. Rhetorically, he says some things that appeal, but then he had 4 years and didn't fulfill any of those verbal commitments. Not really. Coal, yeah, the coal industry is very big in Kentucky, or it used to be. I don't think Trump had any effect on it either way. Yeah, yeah, his rhetoric was pro-coal, pro-oil, pro-weapons. I'm sorry, what? Oh, Syria. Right. Yeah, let's just steal it. I mean, that's imperialism, or that's almost colonialism. Totally illegal. Mike Pompeo? Mm-hmm. Right, right. So, uh, overall, in terms of foreign policy, the two major parties in the U.S. are identical. The When the Republican Party is out of power, they propose imperialist illegal wars, and the Democrats implement them. And when the Democrats are out of the White House, they propose imperialist war crimes, and the Republicans implement them. They just cooperate that way, hand in hand. Well, I had to choose one or the other. Third parties never win. I was interested in winning, still am. And so I had to be a Democrat or a Republican. In 2020, I switched parties. I ran against the Republican incumbent U.S. representative in my district in the primary. And they rigged their primary in precisely the same ways that the Kentucky Democratic Party does. They're identical. I became a Republican for about a year and a half, 2020, and a few months before, a few months after. I ran as a Republican, and in the primary, the Republican Party rigged it illegally in exactly the same way the Democrats do. And they got the same kind of judges who said there's nothing wrong with that. I've been suing these parties since 2015, and I have never been able to get any judge or appellate court to say rigging primary elections is illegal. No judge is willing to make that radical statement. It's too radical for them. Yeah. No, no. My 1 year with the Republicans, they would tell me about their meetings. But there was one I remember. It was Republican Women's Club of my area, and I was there, and various candidates were talking. They had like 3 minutes each. Various Republicans talking about their campaigns for the state legislature or whatever office. And then one of the last ones who got up to speak said, "Everybody here like Trump?" Everybody raised their hands, and I didn't. And I said to the people at my table, uh, not very loudly, I said, well, he's a war criminal. And I said, no, he isn't. Biden is too, of course. Biden's a war criminal too. Trump isn't. So, kind of funny, but that's the last meeting I attended of their group. The election happened and I didn't win, and so I became a Democrat again. I went down to the town hall and changed my registration. I think it's starting to end. The rest of the world, led by China and Russia, are have made it clear that it's a multipolar world now, and that the Western powers, especially the United States, will not be able to get away with plundering the rest of the world anymore. It's changing rapidly as we speak. Well, billionaires continue to increase their income and wealth, uh, but regular people don't benefit at all from empire. It's all being siphoned up to the top. The 1% or the top 1/10 of 1% are getting unimaginably wealthy, and the people, just like in Western Europe, are getting squeezed harder and harder as inflation continues and sanctions against Russia backfire and harm our economy, mainly Germany's economy, but also harm our own here. So all of that is going to come to an end. There's another saying that systems that are unsustainable eventually stop. Something can't keep going on. Eventually, it won't. So I don't know what is going to happen, but I think that Western Europe has already entered a period of very tough times, and the United States is soon to follow. Well, you're the first person to have asked me those questions. Uh, I don't have much of a position on it. Um, I, I guess I think it's unfair when transgendered women who used to be biologically male um, win women's sporting events. I don't. It doesn't seem fair to me, but it's certainly not a big issue in any of my campaigns. Yeah, right. hmm Hmm. Yeah, I'm extremely pro-union, pro-organized labor, and also pro-cooperatives. So when I'm running for governor this year, I'm talking about um, uh, opposing large multi-state or multinational banks and supporting small local banks and credit unions, which is a type of cooperative. So yeah, I'm on the left in regard to workers' rights, and I'm opposed to huge banks and huge venture capital funds that actually have major impacts on whole countries. Yes, I'm talking about 50 state banks, like like North Dakota. But then on the national level, we might need to, if Wall Street collapses and the value of the dollar crashes, we might need to think about nationalizing the largest banks as well and investment banks. That would be after another Great Depression occurs. Okay. Well, we supposedly have 17 members of the intelligence community in the United States. The CIA, since it was founded in 1947, has been by far the worst one, the most law-breaking, the most deadly. Uh, so I think it should be totally abolished, and we can easily meet our legitimate needs for information and intelligence by using the 16 others. Well, there's the FBI, there's the State Department has an intelligence, there's the Defense Intelligence Agency, each branch of the armed services, the Air Force, the Navy, the Army, have their own intelligence operations. And so just reactivate all of those and get rid of the worst one, which has gotten us into wars. The CIA was involved in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963. CIA and the FBI conspired to assassinate the person I feel has been the greatest American politician in my lifetime, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee. So yeah, these are secret intelligence agencies that could be said to control the entire government uh, behind the scenes. That's right. Trump talked about it, but I would be serious about it. I'm not running for president, but I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Might do some of those things, might actually drain the swamp to a degree that people would notice the difference. Yeah, certain industries, especially military production, we have an incredibly inefficient military industrial complex. Russia spends, I think, about 10% every year of the budget that the United States spends, and they actually get weapons that work, a well trained, effective army, Air Force, submarine fleet. Our America's submarine fleet isn't bad in terms of its effectiveness. I wish there were no nuclear weapons, but that would have to be the subject of international negotiations. But yeah, we don't get anything from our $1 trillion annual so-called defense bill except making billionaires richer. Um, they don't work. they, they require a tremendous amount of maintenance, training to make them work. So these previous generation weapons we've been sending to Ukraine, a lot of them can't be used, or they get destroyed within a week or so after arriving near the front lines. Um, the Ukraine war has been a demonstration of Russian military skill and logistical ability, contrasted with high-tech NATO weaponry that is getting destroyed. So this is a major defeat. I think this will continue until Ukraine is forced to surrender, in effect. And it's a demonstration of how inefficient US and NATO weapons systems are in the real world. I'd like to see all countries reduce the amount of armaments they think they need. Actually, last year I proposed that the so-called defense budget of the United States be cut by 75% and completely stop huge expensive programs such as the modernization of our nuclear weapons stockpile. Cut that to zero. Why do they need to be modernized if they're going to be phased out worldwide? So I had some pretty radical. I did not propose making the defense budget zero, but cutting it by 3/4, yes. If they have fewer toys to play with, we'll get in less trouble. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. I don't. I wish you good luck. Um, I strongly support the idea of neutrality for Switzerland, and you all did very well for hundreds of years, or at least I don't know how many years, at least 100, uh, with a neutral position. Um, I think neutrality is the way to go in the 21st century. Hmm. Hmm. The other possible outcome could be a separation between approximately 1 billion people, 1/8 of the world's population, hunkered down in the West, or including Australia and Japan, Canada, U.S., some Western European countries, uh, uh, separated from, divorced from 7/8 of the world's population in the rest of the world. all united by a Belt and Road for trade and their own reserve currency, so they wouldn't depend on the dollar. That's a possible outcome. That might even be the most likely outcome, where you've got the West against everyone else, a kind of second Cold War. Mhm. I think you're right. China has a pretty consistent policy. We'd like to do business with you. We're not going to interfere in your domestic affairs. That's pretty admirable, I think. Right. Mhm. All right. Well, thank you for talking with me. It's been very interesting, and appreciate the. Oh, thank you. Okay, thanks. You too. Yes, please. Entire video or any, if you break it into parts, send me all the parts, whatever you want to do. I'm not sure what I'll do. I believe I can edit it. Thanks. Good talking with you.